In ancient Athens, a night with a woman in a brothel could cost as little as 2 pieces of bread or a small jug of cheap wine. These women, known as pornai, were at the lowest level of society. The term pornai turned them into objects, treated like items to be bought and sold. Court records from speakers like Dio and Lysis show that these women often served 6 to 10 men daily, earning just enough to buy a handful of lentils. While they struggled, brothel owners grew wealthy, and some of their profits went to the city as taxes. Athenian laws did not set a minimum age for prostitution. Historical records and archaeological finds reveal that girls as young as 10 or 13 were forced into this work. Each enslaved girl had a mark burned onto her thigh with hot iron, a permanent sign of her status as property. Life in the brothels was cruel. Refusing to work brought brutal punishments like public whippings, days without food, or worse. When a new girl arrived, she faced a harsh ritual, attacked in front of others to break her spirit and destroy any hope of escape. A man named Pappy from Thessaly wrote that this was done on purpose, with onlookers mocking and laughing at her pain. New girls were highly valued, and men paid up to 10 times more for someone new to the trade. Writers of the time described these deals casually, like buying fresh produce. There was no privacy in the brothels. Women worked in crowded rooms, separated only by dirty cloths or mats. Their cries of pain blended into the noise, entertaining men waiting their turn. Brothel owners sorted women into cruel categories: women from Nubia, very short women, those who couldn't speak, those who resisted, or those still considered unbroken. Each group had its own price and customers. Art from the 5th century shows contests where men tried to overpower resisting women for fun. Graffiti on brothel walls reveals that some men paid extra to cause harm, like cutting faces, leaving scars, or causing permanent injuries. Violence was sold like any other service. Some women were advertised specifically for abuse, with injuries like broken lips, shattered teeth, or burns from spilled oil lamps. To some men, a woman's suffering was like art, her screams a twisted form of music. In Athens, a city famous for philosophy and theatre, cruelty toward these women was a profitable business. The worst abuses happened during religious festivals, especially the festival of Dionysia. During these events, women were given to groups of men for free as part of so-called sacred rituals. Surviving accounts describe drunken men attacking women while music played and bets were made on how long they could endure. Medical records from the time list deaths from internal injuries, suffocation, or severe blood loss. Priests claimed these acts pleased the gods, mixing wine with the blood of abused women on altars. When the festivals ended, survivors were dragged back to work, while the dead were thrown into ravines outside the city like garbage. Daily life in the brothels was filled with violence. Women faced beatings with sticks, straps, or fists. Regular customers sometimes joined in, creating cruel games for small mistakes, like spilling wine or crying. A woman might be locked in a dark room without food or water for days, or tied to a post in the courtyard, left to freeze in winter or bake in the summer sun. Owners called this fixing behavior. Everyday objects like wooden clubs or heavy cups were used to punish disobedience. Over time, women learned to hide their pain with fake smiles, as showing tears only led to more violence. In a city that celebrated perfect human forms in art, these women's bodies were covered in bruises, burns, and scars. Escaping was nearly impossible. The law saw it as stealing property, not seeking freedom. Runaways faced brutal punishments, like being branded on the face or chest with hot metal to mark them as deserters. Court records mention women nailed to boards in public squares as warnings, dying from thirst or infected wounds. Some women fled to temples, begging for protection, but priests often took bribes and returned them to their owners. Failed escapes brought even harsher punishments, designed to break their will while keeping them useful for work. Most women in brothels died young, often in their mid-20s, from diseases, untreated wounds, exhaustion, or starvation. Owners saw no need for medical care. A new girl was cheaper than a doctor. Even women with severe infections or open sores were forced to keep working. Archaeological digs near old brothels have found female skeletons with signs of extreme abuse, broken pelvises, cracked skulls, and deformed spines, all proof of a life of suffering. When a woman could no longer work, she was abandoned outside the city, dead or alive. Pregnancy was seen as damage to property. Owners forced women to drink poisons, struck their stomachs, or made them lift heavy loads to cause miscarriages. Medical texts describe brutal methods, like using herbs that caused sickness or sharp sticks inserted into the body. If a child was born, it happened on the same dirty mats where work was done, with no medical help. Many women died from bleeding or infections after birth. Tiny infant bones have been found in drainage ditches and trash heaps, showing that killing newborns, especially girls, was common. For some women, this was their only way to spare their child from the same horrific life. Under Athenian law, these women had no rights. They were trapped by fake debts for food or shelter, debts that grew with unfair fines. Refusing a customer, even a violent one, was not allowed. The legal system offered no protection. Women's words were only believed if they were tortured first. In a society that created democracy, enslaved women were valued less than animals, which were at least fed and sheltered. Rarely, a woman might gain a slightly better life. A wealthy patron might buy her freedom, or an owner might train her as a dancer or musician for richer clients. But for most, this hope never came. Even favored women, given private rooms and fine clothes, were still property. Their status depended on a man's mood, and they could be sent back to the common brothel or killed for any mistake. They were sometimes shared with guests like borrowed objects. In the end, age took away their value, and they faced the same grim fate as others. These women were denied proper burials. Their bodies were thrown into ravines, or buried without markers, against Greek customs. Even freed women were shunned by society, living as outcasts. Their lives left no trace in official records. Archaeologists have found their remains mixed with broken pottery and trash, a final sign of their worth in Athenian eyes. Athenian culture turned their pain into entertainment. Plays by writers like Aristophanes mocked prostitutes, showing their abuse as comedy. Crowds laughed at scenes of rape and beatings. Pottery showed violent acts, used to decorate homes like everyday art. While poets praised high-class courtesans, brothel women were ridiculed in verse. Their suffering turned into jokes. In a city that valued tragic theater, real women's tragedies were ignored. Athens' wealth came partly from this cruelty. Brothels paid taxes, and trading women was big business. While philosophers like Socrates discussed virtue, women were sold nearby. The city's grand temples and theaters were built with profits from their suffering. Modern stories about ancient Greece often skip this dark truth, focusing only on its glory. But the ruins of Athens hold these women's stories in unmarked graves, broken pottery, and faint graffiti. Their lives matter and should be remembered. Thank you for reading this history. If it moved you, please support our work by liking and sharing. Your thoughts in the comments help us share more forgotten stories.